Hello, I'm Father George Salzman at the Harvard Catholic Center. We're here in the courtyard right by St. Paul's Church behind me. And I wanted to talk about not only All Souls Day, which is past, but the month of November when we remember those at the altar of the Lord. We remember those whom we love who went before us. And I wanted to tell a story to use as an analogy first. Could I do that? Once I was at Yale. We all make mistakes. Once I was at Yale for a lecture. And it was someone who'd been the Time Bureau chief during Vatican II. And he was talking about the council. And instead of telling stories from the council, what he did was give a thumbs up, thumbs down for what he liked, didn't like, and so on. And to be quite frank, he told us nothing at all. He told us, of course, he liked this, didn't like that, but it was utterly uninformative by a person who was so informed and generally informative in all other instances. So I must confess I was puzzled. And I wanted to suggest a place we could apply that analogy. For those who've gone before us, you can hear their name and so on, but sometimes you might just hear someone's opinion about this or that. What I wanted to suggest is what's far better is if they give us a story which we can unpack. In the analogy I gave, if the fellow told us stories about Vatican II, things that actually happened, that we could unpack that, understand it, evaluate it ourselves, sort it out, we would actually learn. And so for those who've gone before us, instead of having a quick judgment about someone, if we could carry forth stories about what they did and who they were, how powerful that is to pass on to the next generation, to give our families sort of a depth and so on, all those faces some meaning. So I'd like to give an example, which I've shared with some of you at one point, and that is this. My old school was a great old, like a French castle of a building, immense thing, and immense in size. And it closed after about 150 years. And I was asked to do the closing mass for the alumni. So I went down. The church was built by the guy who built the first cathedral. It was larger than it. And so there was the mass. There were 700 people there. And at the end, there were two fellows in their late 20s who were insistent upon telling me a story about my grandfather. So, so I said, well, if I could shake hands first. So I shook hands, but it was like 700 people. I couldn't believe anybody would be good enough to stay the whole time, but they did. And so I turned to the first person. I said, he said, I want to tell you a story about your grandfather, Dr. Bigley. I said, I think you mean my uncle, Joe Bigley, his son, who made house calls here until 1991, who served here in succession as a doctor for 50 years. He said, oh, no, Father, your grandfather, Dr. Bigley. Now, he died in 1943 before I was born, certainly before these guys in their late 20s were born. And I was amazed. So he said, my great-great-grandmother came out of an orphanage and had no place to go. And he and his wife took her in, made her part of the family. She was the nanny to the 6 Bigley kids. And they helped her have her marriage and get a house. And as a result, in all the generations of our family since, and in every household in each generation, the oldest boy is always named Francis Peter after your grandfather. Can you believe it? This is a guy in his late 20s in 2011 about a guy who